All right, let's dive into cloud security today.
Sounds good.
Specifically, we're thinking about prepping for the CCSP exam.
Okay.
And, anyone who's listening already knows this certification is a big deal
Oh, yeah.
when it comes to proving you can actually secure cloud environments.
Right.
So for this deep dive, we're going to be using the ISO 19789 Cloud Reference Architecture as our guide.
Cool.
So think of this like a really detailed map of a city,
Uh-huh.
showing all the important buildings and how they're connected.
Mm-mm.
But in this case, the city is our cloud environment.
Makes sense.
But just to be clear,
Yeah.
there are no reference architecture police out there.
Right.
It's really about understanding the principles and then being able to apply them
Yeah.
to real-world situations,
Absolutely.
which can be messy.
Yeah, you're totally right.
So it's a starting point. It's a framework
It is.
for understanding the different parts of the cloud ecosystem
Right.
and how they interact.
Yeah,
But the real world is dynamic,
for sure.
and things shift depending on the situation.
Absolutely.
So let's unpack the different activities that take place in a cloud environment.
Okay.
We're talking everything from actually using cloud services
Right.
to things like monitoring their performance,
Uh-huh.
managing billing,
Yeah.
and even requesting audit reports.
Right. So like a bustling city.
Yeah.
With the different departments all handling different things.
Right. And just like in a city,
Yeah.
understanding who is responsible for what is crucial
Absolutely.
for making sure that it operates smoothly.
Right.
So let's talk about responsibilities.
Okay.
When we talk about cloud, we always hear about this shared responsibility model
Yeah.
between the customer, the provider, and sometimes even partners.
Yeah.
So can you break that down for us a little bit?
Sure. So let's imagine you're using cloud storage
Okay.
to store sensitive data, like patient records.
Okay.
You, as the customer, are responsible for configuring the access control policies
Uh-huh.
that determine who can access what. You need to know what data is going in there and make sure it's appropriately protected.
So it's kind of like being responsible for locking the doors in your house.
Exactly, like setting the alarm system.
Right.
But the cloud provider also has responsibilities.
Right.
They need to make sure that data is encrypted while it's stored on their servers and make sure that your access control policies are actually enforced.
Okay.
So think of it like they're responsible for the overall security of the neighborhood.
So even though I'm responsible for locking my own doors,
Right.
the provider's making sure that the street lights work
Exactly.
and that maybe there's neighborhood watch.
Exactly.
It's a team effort.
It is a team effort, and this is one of the key concepts for the CCSP exam.
Okay.
You need to understand where your responsibilities end and the providers begin.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Good.
So now let's talk about the different ways that we can actually deploy cloud services.
Okay.
We've got private, public hybrid, multi-cloud, and community cloud.
A lot of options.
There are a lot of options, 5 to be exact.
All right.
So think of these as like different types of neighborhoods you could choose to live in.
Okay. I like that.
Each one has its own unique characteristics
Right.
and considerations.
Yeah.
So let's start with private cloud.
Okay.
This is like living in a gated community.
Okay.
You have complete control over the environment,
Yeah.
but it comes at a higher cost.
Yeah. They offer the highest level of control and security
Okay.
because you're not sharing resources with anyone else. So
No.
you can tailor the environment to your specific needs.
Uh-huh.
However, this isolation can be really expensive.
Right.
You're responsible for all the infrastructure and maintenance costs.
So it's like owning your own private island.
Exactly.
You have ultimate privacy,
Uh-huh.
but you also have ultimate responsibility.
That's right.
Now, what about public cloud?
Public cloud is the most common deployment model.
Okay.
It's like a massive apartment complex
Okay.
offering a wide range of services to many different tenants. Right.
You get the benefit of scale and cost savings
Okay.
because you are sharing resources with others.
But like living in a city, security becomes a little bit more complex.
Yeah, you have to be more vigilant
Right.
about locking your doors
Right.
and protecting your belongings.
Because you're sharing space with other people.
Exactly.
So that's where the shared responsibility model we talked about before
Yes.
becomes even more important.
Absolutely.
You need to understand what security controls the provider has in place
Right.
and what you're responsible for.
For sure.
Now, what about those who want the best of both worlds?
Oh, yay.
This is where we get hybrid cloud.
The suburban option.
Right, so you have your own private space
Uh-huh.
for your sensitive stuff,
Right.
but you can still enjoy the shared amenities of the public cloud.
That's right. Hybrid clouds offer a great balance of control and flexibility.
Okay.
You can keep your sensitive data on the private cloud, meeting those compliance requirements.
While leveraging that cost-effectiveness of public cloud
Okay.
for other workloads.
So it's like having a home office
Yeah.
for your sensitive work,
Uh-huh.
but then also using a co-working space
Right?
for other tasks.
Exactly.
You get the best of both environments.
We do.
Now, what if someone wants to explore different cities?
All right.
That's multi-cloud.
That's right. Multi-cloud is like living in different cities,
Okay.
each with its own unique charm and advantages.
Okay.
You might choose to use different cloud providers for different services to take advantage of their strengths and specializations.
So you could be enjoying the art scene in Paris,
Right?
the culinary delights of Tokyo,
Yes.
and the tech innovation of Silicon Valley all at the same time.
All at the same time.
But managing security across multiple platforms
Yeah.
can be challenging.
It definitely adds complexity. You need to have a comprehensive understanding of each provider's security controls, and then make sure that aligns with your overall security strategy.
So it's like learning the local customs and laws of each city that you're living in.
Yeah.
Now, lastly, we have community cloud.
Okay.
And this is like, I don't know, maybe a college dorm
That's a great analogy.
where you're sharing resources with others.
Community clouds are shared by organizations with common interests or requirements.
Okay.
So think about universities sharing resources or government agencies collaborating on a project. They offer that balance of control and cost effectiveness,
Okay.
similar to a private cloud,
Right.
but with that added benefit of shared resources and collaboration.
Okay, so we've got our different deployment models down,
We do.
but now I'm kind of curious about the different service categories that are offered within those models.
All right.
So we're talking IaaS or SaaS.
Yeah, those acronyms that always pop up in cloud discussions.
Right.
Think of these as like different levels of service you can choose from in our cloud city.
Okay.
Each offering a different level of control, flexibility, and responsibility.
All right, sounds good.
So let's start with IES,
Okay.
infrastructure as a service.
Okay.
This is like renting a plot of land in our cloud city and building your own house from scratch.
Right.
You have complete control over the design, the construction, the maintenance.
So you're responsible for everything,
You are.
like the foundation, the walls, the roof,
That can
the
be.
plumbing, the electrical.
Exactly. You get the raw materials, the servers, the storage, the networks.
Right.
And you build your cloud infrastructure according to your specific needs.
Uh-huh.
You choose the operating system, you install the applications, you configure the security settings.
Okay.
It's all on you.
That sounds like a lot of responsibility.
It is.
What about those of us who aren't expert architects or builders?
Right. Well, that's where PaaS comes in.
Okay.
Platform as a service.
Okay.
This is like renting an apartment in our cloud city.
Okay.
The building owner takes care of the infrastructure,
Right.
the foundation, the walls, the utilities, and you just focus on decorating and furnishing your space.
So I don't have to worry about the underlying infrastructure,
That's right.
like the operating system or the physical servers.
You don't.
I just get a platform to run my applications.
Exactly. The provider gives you the tools and resources
Okay.
that you need to develop, deploy, and manage your applications
Wow.
without having to manage all that complex infrastructure underneath.
That sounds a lot more appealing.
It is for a lot of people.
To a lot of people who want to focus on their applications
Yeah,
rather than the underlying plumbing.
right.
Okay, now what about SaaS?
SaaS, software as a service.
Okay.
This is like staying in a fully furnished hotel room
Okay.
in our cloud city.
Right.
Everything is provided for you.
Okay.
You just need to bring your suitcase.
So I don't have to worry about building or maintaining anything.
Nope.
I just log in and use the application.
Exactly. SaaS provides you with access to a complete software application
Okay.
that's running on the provider's infrastructure. So think of things like email, CRM, project management tools.
Right.
Just subscribe to the service and access it over the internet.
Okay, so I think I'm starting to get a grasp on these different service categories.
All right.
But how does security play into all of this?
That's a great question, and it's something that's heavily emphasized in the CCSP exam.
Okay.
The security responsibility shifts depending on the service model that you choose.
So with IS, since I'm building everything from the ground up, I imagine security is largely my responsibility.
You're absolutely right. With IS, you have the most control and therefore the most responsibility for security.
Yeah.
You're responsible for securing the operating system, the applications, the data, and even the network configurations.
So it's like I'm building my own security system
Exactly.
for my house.
You choose the locks, the
Ah.
alarms, the cameras,
Okay.
everything.
Right, but the provider still has some security responsibilities.
Right. They're responsible for the physical infrastructure, the
Right.
data center, the servers, the network hardware.
So they're making sure the neighborhood where my house is safe.
Exactly.
Okay, now what about PaaS?
With PaaS, the provider takes on more responsibility for security.
Okay.
They secure the operating system, the underlying middleware, and that physical infrastructure.
So the apartment building owner is responsible for the building itself,
Uh-huh.
but I'm responsible for my own apartment.
That's a great analogy.
Okay, and then with SaaS, the provider takes on even more security responsibility.
Yes. They are responsible for securing the application, the data, the operating system, and the infrastructure.
So all I have to worry about is,
You are primarily focused on managing user access and data governance.
so like when I'm staying at a hotel,
Yeah.
the hotel management is responsible for the overall security,
Yeah.
but I'm still responsible for keeping my room door locked
Exactly.
and not leaving my valuables lying around.
That's a great analogy. Understanding this shared responsibility model
Right.
is crucial for the CCSP exam.
Right.
You need to be able to identify who's responsible for what in different cloud service models and different scenarios.
Okay, this is all starting to click now.
Good.
But it sounds like even with SaaS, where the provider is managing most of the security,
Yeah,
I still have some responsibilities as a customer.
absolutely. No matter which cloud service model you choose, you are always responsible for your data.
Okay.
You need to understand where it's stored, who has access to it, and what security controls are in place to protect it.
So no matter where I live, I'm always responsible for my stuff.
Precisely. And this brings us to another important topic, cloud governance.
Governance sounds a little formal.
It does.
Is that something that I need to worry about for the CCSP exam?
Absolutely. Cloud governance is all about establishing a framework
Okay.
for managing your cloud environment securely and effectively.
Oh.
Think of it like the city council setting rules and regulations to ensure the well-being of the entire community.
So it's not just about the technical aspects of security.
Not at all. Cloud governance encompasses everything.
Okay.
From defining policies and procedures.
To managing risks and compliance.
Okay.
It's about making sure everyone's playing by the rules.
Right.
And that your cloud environment is being used responsibly.
So what kind of things would fall under that cloud governance umbrella?
So that would include things like
Okay.
establishing a clear cloud strategy,
Okay.
defining roles and responsibilities,
Right.
setting security standards,
Right.
implementing access controls,
Okay.
managing vendor relationships,
Uh-huh.
and ensuring compliance with relevant regulations.
Okay. That's a lot.
It is a lot to consider.
But I can see how it's all connected. It's
Yeah.
about creating a structure and a culture of security
Exactly.
around your cloud environment.
And this is a key area of focus for the CCSP exam.
Okay.
You need to understand the principles of cloud governance and how to apply them in real-world scenarios.
All right. I'm adding cloud governance to my list of must-know topics
Good.
for the exam. But, earlier we were talking about audit reports as
Mhm.
one of the activities.
In a cloud environment. So how do audits fit into this whole picture?
That's a great question. Audits are a crucial part of cloud governance.
Okay.
They provide independent assurance
Wow.
that your cloud environment is meeting the required security standards and complying with relevant regulations.
So it's like having an inspector come in to make sure everything is up to code.
Exactly. Audits can be conducted by internal teams or external auditors,
Okay.
and they can focus on different areas,
Right.
such as security controls, data privacy compliance requirements, or financial management.
So it's not just about checking to see if the technical stuff is working right.
Not at all. Audits also look at processes, policies, and documentation
Okay.
to ensure that there is a robust governance framework in place.
So it's about making sure the entire system is working as intended.
Exactly. And audits can be either scheduled or unscheduled.
Okay.
Scheduled audits are planned in advance,
Right.
while unscheduled audits can happen at any time.
Okay. So it's like those pop quizzes we used to get in school. You always got to be prepared.
Always be prepared, but why would a cloud provider agree to an unscheduled audit?
Right. Because wouldn't they want to have time to prepare?
Right.
To make sure everything's in order?
That's where strong contracts and service level agreements, or SLAs, come in.
Okay.
When you're negotiating with a cloud provider,
Uh-huh.
you need to ensure that your contract includes the right to conduct audits,
Okay.
both scheduled and unscheduled.
So it's like having a clause in my lease agreement
Uh-huh.
that allows the landlord to come in and do an inspection.
Exactly. And these audits are essential
Okay.
for maintaining accountability and transparency in your cloud environment.
Okay.
They help ensure that your provider is meeting their security obligations
Right.
and that your data is being protected.
So cloud governance audits contracts.
Yep.
It's all about establishing this framework of trust and accountability.
You got it. And this leads us to another important aspect of cloud governance, regulatory compliance.
Regulations.
Yes.
Always fun.
They are a necessary part of doing business.
How do those come into play?
Well, just like in the physical world,
Uh-huh.
there are laws and regulations that govern the handling of data
Okay.
and the operation of IT systems in the cloud.
So even though my data is floating around in the cloud,
Yes.
it's still subject to the same rules?
It is,
As
as if it were stored in my own data center.
Okay.
Exactly. And these regulations vary
Huh.
depending on the industry you're in,
Uh-huh.
the type of data you're handling,
Okay.
and even the geographical location of your data.
So what are some of the examples?
Okay, so some of the most common regulations that you need to be familiar with include HIPAA,
Okay.
which governs the handling of protected health information.
Right.
PCI DSS,
Okay.
which sets security standards for credit card processing.
Uh-huh.
GDPR,
Okay.
the European Union's data protection regulation.
Right.
And SOX,
Okay.
which focuses on financial reporting and corporate governance.
A lot of acronyms.
There are a lot of acronyms.
But it sounds like the key takeaway here
Yes.
is that cloud computing doesn't exempt me
No.
from compliance obligations.
That's right.
I still need to make sure that my cloud environment meets all the requirements of these regulations.
It does, and this is where due diligence comes in.
Okay.
When choosing a cloud provider,
Uh-huh.
you need to carefully assess their compliance posture.
So it's like I'm doing a background check.
Exactly.
My cloud provider.
You need to understand what certifications they hold,
Right.
what security controls they have in place, and how they can help you meet your compliance obligations.
So I'm adding compliance assessment to my cloud provider checklist.
Good.
But what happens if a provider fails to meet its compliance obligations? Are there consequences?
That's another great question, and it highlights the importance of having those strong contracts and
Right.
SLAs in place.
Okay.
Your contract should clearly outline the provider's compliance responsibilities and the consequences of non-compliance.
No. So it's like having penalties written into a contract
Yeah.
for failing to meet building codes or something.
Exactly. These penalties could include financial compensation, service credits, or even termination of the contract.
Okay, so contracts, SLAs, compliance.
Yep.
It's all about accountability in the cloud.
It is.
But what about cloud partners? What role do they play in all of this?
Cloud partners can play a variety of roles,
Right.
from helping with cloud migration and implementation to providing specialized security services
Okay.
or managing specific aspects of your cloud environment.
So they're like subcontractors who specialize
Exactly.
in different areas of cloud expertise.
And just like with any subcontractor, it's important to carefully vet your cloud partners
Okay.
and make sure that they understand your security requirements and compliance obligations.
So it's not just about checking the credentials of the main contractor.
Right.
I also have to make sure the subs are up to par.
Exactly. And when it comes to security, you need to have a clear understanding of what responsibilities you're delegating to your cloud partner
Right.
and how those responsibilities are being managed.
Okay. It's like building a secure house in the cloud
Uh-huh.
requires this whole team of skilled professionals,
Right.
each with their own expertise and responsibilities,
Yeah.
all working together under a clear governance framework.
You got it. And understanding this complex interplay of roles and responsibilities and
Right.
regulations is essential for succeeding on that CCSP exam.
Okay. I'm feeling much more confident about tackling those CCSP exam questions now.
Good.
But before we move on,
Yeah.
I want to come back to something that we talked about earlier,
Okay.
which is the fact that real-world cloud deployments are often more complex
Yes.
than the categories and models that we've been discussing.
You're absolutely right. The cloud landscape is constantly evolving.
Right.
And organizations are finding really creative ways to leverage different cloud services and deployment models
Right.
to meet their own unique needs.
So while it's important to understand the fundamentals,
It is.
we also need to be flexible
We do.
and adaptable when applying them to real-world situations.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to develop critical thinking skills
Right.
and the ability to analyze complex cloud environments.
So it's not just about memorizing facts and definitions,
Right.
but being able to apply that knowledge
Yes.
to solve problems in the real world.
Exactly. And this is where the CCSP exam really shines.
Okay.
It's not just about testing your knowledge of cloud security concepts,
Uh-huh.
but also your ability to think critically and make sound judgments in complex situations.
Okay, I'm getting excited about this challenge now.
Good. I'm glad.
But I have to admit, there's one thing that's still puzzling me.
Okay.
We talked about all these different deployment models,
Mm-hmm.
but we didn't really dive into the security implications.
Yeah, you're right. Let's take a closer look at those security implications, starting with the public cloud.
Okay, so public cloud, that's the bustling city where you're sharing resources with lots of other tenants. What are the key security concerns in that kind of environment?
One of the biggest concerns is data security.
Well,
When you're storing your data in a shared environment,
right.
you need to be extra vigilant about protecting it from unauthorized access.
So it's like living in an apartment building with shared laundry facilities.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't want to leave my delicates unattended.
Exactly. You need to make sure your data is encrypted both at rest and in transit,
Uh-huh.
and that you have strong access controls in place to limit who can access it.
Okay. And since I'm sharing resources with others, does that mean there's a higher risk of attacks?
That's a valid concern.
Okay.
In a shared environment, you're essentially trusting the provider to secure the infrastructure
Okay.
and prevent attacks.
Right.
That's why it's crucial to carefully evaluate the provider's security posture
Okay.
and make sure they have robust security controls in place.
So it's like I'm choosing a safe neighborhood to live in.
Exactly. I want to make sure the building has good security
Uh-huh.
and the surrounding area is well protected.
Exactly. And another important consideration in the public cloud is compliance.
Okay.
If you're handling sensitive data, you need to make sure that the provider can meet those compliance
Right.
requirements of relevant regulations.
Like IPA or GDPR.
Exactly.
So it's not just about protecting my data from hackers.
Right.
It's also about making sure I'm complying with the law.
Exactly. And this brings us to another key aspect of public cloud security,
Okay.
the shared responsibility model.
Ah, yes. That concept that we talked about earlier. Can you remind us how that plays out in the public cloud?
Sure, in the public cloud, the provider is responsible for securing that underlying infrastructure.
Okay.
The physical servers, the network, the hypervisor.
Uh-huh.
You as the customer are responsible for securing everything above that layer.
Okay.
The operating system, the applications, and the data.
So the provider is responsible for the security of the apartment building.
But I'm responsible for my own apartment.
Exactly. And this is where things can get tricky.
Okay.
It's important to have a clear understanding of where your responsibilities begin and end.
Right.
And make sure you are implementing the necessary security controls to protect your assets.
Okay. I think I'm starting to get a better grasp on public cloud security.
Good.
What about the other deployment models? Let's talk about private cloud next.
All right, so the private cloud, remember our gated community analogy. Since you have complete control over the environment, you also have full responsibility for security.
Okay, so it's like owning my own house.
Exactly.
I'm responsible for everything.
Everything from the locks on the doors to the security system to the landscaping.
Wow.
You have to manage all aspects of security, from physical security to network security
Wow.
to application security to data security.
It's a lot.
It is a lot to handle, but it also gives you the most control and flexibility.
Okay, so it's the best option for those who need that high level of security and are willing to invest the resources to do it.
Precisely. And private clouds are often the preferred choice for organizations
Okay.
that are handling highly sensitive data, such as government agencies or
Right.
financial institutions.
Makes sense, but that would also make private clouds much more expensive to manage, right?
That is true. Private clouds can be more expensive
Okay.
to set up and maintain than public clouds
Right.
because you are responsible for all those costs
Right.
associated with the infrastructure.
Uh-huh.
However, for some organizations, the increased security and control
Yeah.
is worth that extra expense.
Okay, now what about hybrid cloud?
Right, hybrid cloud.
That's where you're kind of combining the best of both worlds.
Yes, you are.
Public cloud and private cloud.
Yeah.
How does that impact security?
Hybrid clouds can be quite complex from a security perspective
Okay.
because you're essentially managing security across two different environments.
Right.
So it's like having a house with an attached guest suite. You need to make sure both the main house and the guest suite are secure,
Right.
but you might have different security measures in place for each area.
Yeah, so I might have a really high-tech security system for my main house
Uh-huh.
where I keep all my valuable stuff,
Right.
but a more simple setup for the guest house.
Exactly. In a hybrid cloud, you need to carefully consider
Wow.
how you are going to secure data and applications that are moving between those public and private cloud environments.
Okay. And how do you manage the shared responsibility model in a hybrid cloud environment?
That's a great question. The shared responsibility model still applies.
Okay.
But it can get a bit more complicated.
Right.
You need to have a clear understanding of which security controls are being managed by the public cloud provider,
Right.
which controls are being managed by you in your private cloud,
Okay.
and how those controls interact with each other.
So it's like I have two sets of house rules, one for the main house and one for the guest house. And I need to make sure that they work together.
They do. And this is where strong governance and clear communication become even more critical.
Right.
You need to have a well-defined security strategy that spans both environments and ensure that everyone involved understands their roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, you don't want any confusion about who's doing what.
No, you don't.
Especially when it comes to something as important as security.
Exactly. Now let's tackle the multi-cloud model.
Multi-cloud.
Yes.
What happens when you're using multiple cloud providers?
Multi-cloud environments can be even more challenging from a security perspective because you are now dealing with multiple different security platforms, policies, and procedures.
So it's like trying to manage security across a bunch of different countries.
That's a great analogy.
Each with their own laws and customs.
You need to have a deep understanding of each provider's security capabilities, their shared responsibility model, and how their security controls align with your overall security strategy.
It sounds complicated.
It can be, but it's becoming increasingly common. As organizations seek to avoid vendor lock-in and leverage the best services from different providers. The key is to have a solid understanding of each provider's security capabilities, their shared responsibility model, and how their security controls align with your overall security strategy.
So it's like I'm traveling to all these different countries.
Yes.
I need to know the local laws and customs of every place that I visit.
Exactly. And this highlights the need for a robust cloud governance framework that can adapt to the complexities of a multi-cloud environment.
Okay, so multi-cloud security is like a puzzle.
It is a puzzle, but it can be solved.
Now, what about community cloud?
Community cloud.
Yeah, how does security work in that kind of environment?
Community clouds share some similarities with private clouds in terms of security. Since you're sharing resources with a limited group of organizations with common interests, you can often achieve a higher level of trust and control compared to the public cloud.
Okay, so it's kind of like I'm living in a gated community.
Exactly.
Where I know all my neighbors, and we kind of have a shared understanding of the rules.
Exactly. However, you still need to be mindful of security risks. Especially if you're sharing sensitive data with other organizations.
So it's like having a neighborhood watch program.
Precisely.
We all have to be vigilant and follow the security protocols.
Exactly. And it's important to have clear agreements in place regarding data ownership, access controls, and incident response procedures.
So if something happens, we all know what to do.
You got it.
Okay. I think we've covered all the security implications of the different deployment models. So now I want to touch on another important topic that's relevant to the CCSP exam. And that's operational security.
Operational security.
Yeah, what is that all about?
Operational security is all about ensuring that ongoing security of your cloud environment, even after you've deployed your applications and data.
So it's like the ongoing maintenance and upkeep of my house.
Exactly.
I got to make sure everything's working properly, fix any problems that come up, and take steps to prevent future issues.
Operational security includes things like vulnerability management, incident response, change management data, backup and recovery, and security monitoring.
That's a lot to keep track of.
It is, but it's all important.
Can you give us some specific examples of what these activities might look like in practice?
So vulnerability management involves regularly scanning your cloud environment for security weaknesses and taking steps to remediate them.
So fix them.
Fix them. This could include applying security patches, configuring firewalls, or updating security configurations.
So I'm checking my house for leaks and cracks and broken windows.
Exactly.
And fixing them right away.
Right away to prevent intruders.
To prevent intruders. Okay, what about incident response?
Incident response involves having a plan in place for how to handle those security incidents, such as data breaches or denial of service attacks.
Okay.
This plan should outline the steps to take to contain the damage, investigate the incident, and recover any lost data.
So it's like having a fire escape plan.
Exactly.
I know what to do in case of emergency.
So you can safely evacuate and minimize the damage.
Okay, what about change management?
Change management involves having a process for controlling changes to your cloud environment. This ensures that changes are made in a secure and controlled manner.
Right.
And that they don't introduce any new security risks.
So it's like getting permits and inspections before I do any renovations to my house.
Precisely.
Okay, now data backup and recovery.
Data backup and recovery involves having a plan for backing up your data.
And restoring it in case of disaster.
Right.
This ensures that you don't lose critical data if your cloud environment is compromised or if there's a hardware failure.
So it's like having a safe deposit box.
Exactly.
Where I keep copies of important documents.
Precisely. And lastly, security monitoring involves continuously monitoring your cloud environment for suspicious activity and security threats. This could include monitoring logs, analyzing network traffic, or using intrusion detection systems.
So it's like having a security camera system for my house.
Exactly. So you can keep an eye on things and detect any potential intruders.
Operational security is a lot.
It is a lot, but it is a critical aspect of cloud security.
Okay.
And it is something that is heavily emphasized in the CCSP exam.
Right.
You need to understand the different elements of operational security and how to implement them effectively in a cloud environment.
All right. I'm adding operational security to my list of must-study topics for the CCSP exam. But before we move on, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, which is the idea of vendor lock-in.
Vendor lock-in.
What is that all about?
Vendor lock-in is a major concern for organizations moving to the cloud.
Okay.
It refers to that situation where you become so reliant on a particular cloud provider that it is difficult or expensive to switch to a different provider later on.
So it's like I'm stuck with a cable company that provides terrible service, but I can't switch because they have a monopoly in my area.
Exactly. And vendor lock-in can be a major obstacle to cloud adoption, especially for organizations that are concerned about flexibility and long-term costs.
So how do you avoid vendor lock-in? Is there a magic bullet?
There's no single solution, but there are several strategies that you can employ to mitigate that risk. One approach is to choose a cloud provider that offers a high degree of portability.
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 What did that mean?
Portability refers to the ability to easily move your applications and data from one cloud environment to another.
So it's like I can pack up all my belongings and move to a new apartment without having to leave anything behind.
And some cloud providers offer tools and services that can help you with portability, such as containerization technologies or cloud-agnostic application development frameworks.
So portability is one way to avoid vendor lock-in.
It is.
What are some other strategies?
Another approach is to use a multi-cloud strategy.
Ah, yes. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. By using multiple different cloud providers, you can avoid becoming too reliant on any single provider. If one provider raises their prices or changes their terms of service, you can always shift your workloads to another provider.
So it's like having multiple bank accounts.
Exactly.
I'm not completely dependent
on
any one bank.
And another strategy is to negotiate strong contracts with your cloud providers that address vendor lock-in concerns. So it's like having a prenup.
Precisely. Your contract should include provisions that protect your interests in case you decide to switch providers, such as data retrieval rights, exit clauses, and service level guarantees.
Okay, so avoiding vendor lock-in is all about having options.
Yes.
And being prepared for the unexpected.
It is.
And now I'm curious about something else.
Okay.
Earlier, we talked about the importance of interoperability in cloud environments.
Right.
So how does that relate to vendor lock-in?
That's a great question. Interoperability refers to the ability of different cloud systems and services to work together seamlessly.
Okay, so it's like having different appliances in my house that can all plug into the same electrical outlets.
Exactly. And interoperability is essential for avoiding vendor lock-in. Because it allows you to mix and match services from different providers without having to worry about compatibility issues.
So if one appliance breaks down, I can easily replace it with a different brand without having to rewire my entire house. Exactly. And there are several standards and technologies that promote interoperability in cloud environments, such as RESTful APIs, open data formats, and cloud-agnostic programming languages.
So interoperability is all about creating a level playing field.
Yes, it is.
In the cloud. So I'm not tied to any particular vendor.
You got it. And this is something that's becoming increasingly important.
Right.
As organizations adopt more complex multi-cloud strategies.
Okay, so I think I have a good grasp on vendor lock-in and interoperability now.
Good.
But before we wrap up this discussion on operational security, I want to touch on another important concept.
Okay.
And that's reversibility.
Reversibility.
Yeah, what is that?
Reversibility refers to the ability to easily move your applications and data back from the cloud.
Okay.
To your own on-premises infrastructure.
So it's like being able to move back into my old house.
Exactly.
After renting an apartment for a while.
And reversibility is important for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
First, it gives you a safety net in case something goes wrong with your cloud provider.
Okay.
If your provider experiences an outage, a security breach, or a compliance issue,
right.
You can always move your workloads back in-house.
So it's like having a backup generator for my house.
Precisely.
In case the power goes out.
Second, reversibility gives you more negotiating power with your cloud provider.
Okay, how so?
If you know you can easily move your workloads to a different provider, you are less likely to be held hostage by your current provider's pricing or terms of service.
So it's like having a competing bid from another contractor.
Exactly. It gives you leverage.
Okay.
And third, reversibility can be important for compliance reasons.
Okay.
Some regulations require that certain types of data be stored within specific geographical boundaries. If you're using a cloud provider that doesn't meet those requirements, you might need to be able to bring your data back in-house.
Okay, so it's like having dual citizenship.
Precisely.
I can easily travel between different countries.
Reversibility is an important consideration when planning your cloud strategy.
Okay.
And it's something that you should discuss with your cloud provider up front.
Okay, so reversibility is important.
It is.
Now, before we completely wrap up, I want to circle back to something we mentioned earlier.
Okay.
The human factor in cloud security.
You're absolutely right. Technology is only one part of the security equation.
Okay.
The human element is equally important, if not more so.
So it's like having the best security system in the world.
Yeah.
But if I leave my doors unlocked or I give my keys to a stranger.
Right. It's all for nothing.
It's pointless.
Precisely, human error is one of the biggest causes of security breaches.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's something that needs to be addressed in any comprehensive cloud security strategy.
So how do we address that?
Well, training and awareness are definitely crucial.
Okay.
Your employees need to understand those security risks associated with cloud computing.
Right.
And how to protect your organization's data.
It's like teaching my kids about stranger danger.
Exactly.
And how to stay safe online.
But it's not just about telling people what not to do.
Right.
You also need to empower them to make good security decisions.
Yeah.
And give them the tools and resources they need to do their job securely.
It's like giving my kids a cell phone with parental controls.
Exactly, and teaching them how to use it responsibly.
Right.
And it's also important to create a culture of security within your organization.
Okay, what does that look like?
This means fostering an environment where people feel comfortable reporting security incidents, asking questions, and challenging risky behavior.
It's like having a neighborhood watch.
Exactly.
Where everybody looks out for each other.
And
we report any suspicious activity.
The human element of cloud security is complex.
Yeah, it is.
And multifaceted, but it's something that needs to be addressed thoughtfully and proactively.
Yeah. I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From cloud deployment models and service categories.
Yes.
To cloud governance, compliance, and operational security.
We've explored the shared responsibility model, the importance of avoiding vendor lock-in.
Right.
And the critical role that those human factors play in cloud security.
My brain is full.
I bet.
But I'm feeling a lot more confident about tackling those CCSP exam questions now.
I'm glad to hear that. Remember, the CCSP exam is not just about testing your knowledge of cloud security concepts, but also your ability to apply those concepts to those real-world scenarios and make sound judgments in complex situations.
I'm ready for the challenge.
Good.
But before we wrap up this deep dive,
I
want to leave everyone with a thought-provoking question.
Right.
Imagine you're tasked with migrating a critical application to the cloud.
Okay.
You're trying to decide between a public cloud and a private cloud deployment.
Right.
What factors would you consider in making that decision? And how would those factors influence your security strategy?
That's a great question to ponder. It's a complex decision with no easy answers. Thinking through those scenarios, weighing the pros and cons of each approach, and anticipating those potential security challenges are all part of what the CCSP exam is about.
That's it for our deep dive today. We hope you found it informative and engaging.
Best of luck on your CCST exam. Keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those cloud environments secure.
Until next time, happy cloud adventures.